Okay, hello and welcome everybody, and thank you always for taking the time to be with us this evening. We are to host a show with the God culture, and I'm waiting for Timothy to jump on to. Okay, hello and welcome everybody, and thank you all. Hold on. Let's see. The time to be with us this evening. There he is. How are you, brother? We are to host a show with the God culture. Timothy, can you hear me, brother?
Yes, Dan, how you doing, man?
Okay, doing great, man. How are you doing this evening?
Doing well this morning here.
Oh, this morning. Where? Oh, you guys are you in the Philippines?
We are currently in the Philippines.
Nice,
yes.
Awesome. I know that you do a lot of work there with the people and the culture, and
Yeah.
you know, why don't you talk a little bit about that as you introduce your channel and tell people where they can go to support your work?
Well, basically, we started our research with the topic of where is the biblical land of gold, Ophir, not for the gold, but for the prophecy, the restoration of it, as well as the Garden of Eden, which actually we didn't intend to find. It just so happens to lead there because the Hebrew goes there, ancient maps go there, the Bible goes there, Jubilees, Enoch, these things all progress in the same fashion. So we started working with Filipinos. My wife is a Filipino native, and she is awesome. And her mom also lived with us in the U.S. During the first years of our marriage, and just such a wonderful woman. And you could just see this culture unfolding that was so beautiful and so rare, something that we just didn't see in America so much. And a lot of people talk about that, but when you experience it, it changes everything. So we set out to prove something. We did. We proved that the Philippines is the ancient land of gold and the Garden of Eden, the location. I know some think it's Africa, some think it's here, some think it's there, but they've got to review the research. We published a 384-page book on that. We have 150 videos plus on that. So we have researched this very, very heavily. Now, in doing so, what we find in, especially being here in the Philippines, is the Philippines is in an identity crisis. They don't know who they are. And because they've lost that identity, yet that is a biblical identity that actually goes back as far as any people, even further than Israel, the land of Israel itself. And so once you restore that and Filipinos start to get a hold of that, man, they have hearts like nothing I've ever seen. They're very open. They are listeners, many. Of course, not everyone. Not everyone is in the same category anywhere, you know that. But anyway, it's been a beautiful work here. We travel around, we conduct conferences, and they're not normally huge, right? I mean, our conferences could be sometimes even just 100, 200 people. Sometimes it's 500 to 1,000. And sometimes we hit something like Davao, where we had over 3,000 in attendance. But the point is, we do these for free. We do them at our expense, typically. And we just keep taking the revenue from the books and we put it into teaching and training Filipinos. Today, you will find many thousands of Filipinos and people around the world, because this is international, that are restoring the name of Yahuwah, one of our big teachings, that are restoring the Sabbath and the feasts, some of our big teachings, and we have a book, Rest, the Case for Sabbath, on that. And you will find that many of them were Catholics before they came to our channel. How about that?
Yeah, that, with what you have said in regard to there being an identity crisis with the Filipino, I think this is not just with them, but with the world, that so many are lost to who they are, where they've come from, how the scriptures reveal the end from the beginning, and yet most people don't know about the beginning and how it leads to where we are. And that's why I think, the study of prophecy is so important and critical in this day and age. And so what you are doing, and others that are also standing themselves up as watchmen and watchwomen, this is the incredible, the repair of the way type of, as Isaiah. And um, but yeah, I see even in your videos how people are embracing, and the culture is embracing you, and that they are grateful. And I think that, it's the same for others that do find the truth and are led to the truth, and that are given true guidance, that, there's no nothing to that can replace that kind of knowledge.
Absolutely. And imagine, and again, it's not that other countries don't experience this. I saw this in Africa too. But there's something about this nation and this precious people. When they learn who they are, they dig in and they want to know the Creator. I remember Carmen used to say something. He used to say, if you want to be creative, you have to get closer to the Creator, right?
Yes.
Then the same goes for the identity. I mean, we don't know who we are until we know Him, because we're nothing
Yes.
with.
Absolutely. And again, I think that we are in that age and in that time where a lot of truths and secrets are being revealed, and that it is bringing people closer in relationship to the Creator and the creation. And I also think that this is something that is inherently um, put into us, so that at some point this becomes important. We do, as a people, as a race, as a being, we want to know who we are, where we're from, what all of this is truly about. There's a bigger purpose and larger reason for all this. And I think people are really, want to know more about that.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Zen. Amen.
Yes. If you would, can you just give out your website and contact information, where people can find your videos, support your work, your books, all of that as well.
Yeah, sure. We recently launched TikTok. No,
Nice.
sorry, no dancing. But we are putting up some teachings over there. It's a little difficult because they're only 10-minute,
Right.
increments. So we've tried, just boiling our videos down to 10 minutes, which is very hard to do. And
Mhm.
of course, what do we get in comments? Well, you didn't prove anything. Duh. In 10 minutes, you know. But we're also, but we're there. And we've created some videos just for TikTok, and we do split up our longer teachings sometimes and put them on there. We're on Rumble, Odyssey is YouTube alternatives, and of course, YouTube is our largest format. We launched podcasts about a year or so ago, and that's actually gained some steam. So you'll find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts. Just go to our website, thegodculture.com, and click on podcasts, and you can listen to it on the site or through whatever pod server you want. For Facebook, we're the God Culture space original, because of course they banned our first page because how dare you teach the Bible, right?
Right.
And so we have alternatives to Facebook on Parler and Gab. We tried one other, but they're in flux right now. They were purchased. So for our books, and this is, we've published 10 books now in 2 years. The Search for King Solomon's Treasure is our case for Ophir and the Garden of Eden in the Philippines. Ophir Coffee Table book is really I come from the high-end luxury publishing industry, so we pulled off a really, really high-end, nice, glossy, quality paper, quality photos, everything very high resolution. Again, abbreviated case for Ophir in a pictorial form someone can leave on their coffee table and make a position right there with their friends. We released Rest, the case for Sabbath, a 432-page book that is a massive case with over 1,000 scriptures and 200 historical references proving that the Sabbath is New Testament doctrine, because it is. Then we published the Book of Jubilees, the first book of Enoch. Within Enoch, we pulled out Enoch's animal dream vision, and we created Bible History Illustrated, which actually takes the chapter 89 and 90 part of it, where Enoch in his sleep saw a dream of the history of the world, starting with Adam, but continuing to his days that he's writing and beyond, all the way to Messiah's coming, which he knew, all the way to the second coming, which he knew. In fact, Enoch even tells you he will be in the rapture. Boom, it's right there. Okay, and then we launched the book of Second Esdras with First Esdras both. And we've now recently launched Apocrypha Volume 1 and Volume 2, dealing with all of the books of Apocrypha. We're testing them. And the same with all of these. We have a thick Torah test in each of these books. What we're not doing is we're not just accepting them as, oh, well, there's a book that was found in Qumran, so, let's just treat it as scripture. No, let's test it. Let's make sure it's scripture. Let's see that it has the true historicity of its Bible canon. Let's make sure the message matches the Bible, and in fact it does. You'll find these books don't just match the Bible, they enhance understanding. With these books, not even ours. I mean, you go download someone else's. It doesn't matter. But the point is, our research is there to really support this case. But these books vet as truth. Again, not all of them in the Apocrypha. Maccabees fails. The book of Esther, whoops, not just in Apocrypha, but also in the regular Bible, fails. And we explain that. We cover that in the book, Apocrypha 2, Volume 2. And then Judith. Judith is the last one that unfortunately fails. It's a harmless book, it seems, but when you look into the history, it's actually really bad.
Well, I applaud you in all of your work and efforts. Your books are really exquisite. They're like works of art in themselves. As far as topics and interests, what other books do you have planned in your mind that you've been led to in research?
How much time do you have?
Yeah, exactly. A whole show in and of itself, huh?
Yeah. I mean, well, look, first of all, what we're doing here is systematically we're going through the Qumran find, what they call the Dead Sea Scrolls, inappropriately because 99.9% is all in Qumran. It's one community. They had basically a temple that they built there. It wasn't the temple, but it was structured like it with lots of water, etc. And they were the biblical keepers of Scripture. We shared with the Scriptures with that last show, yes. If anyone hasn't seen it. And when you realize that is the only course of what the Bible endorses as Bible canon, it actually simplifies everything. Again, we still test the books that are found there, but so far, everyone that we've tested, Zen, every single one vets as truth. Every single one is being quoted by Messiah and the apostles, even in the New Testament.
Uh-huh.
I mean, if they quoted it, why aren't we at least aware of it? Why isn't it in our Bibles?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I think with what you covered and the information that you shared on the last show, and even the focus that we brought on the Qumran community and how you really exposed that as a topic, and even the place of the baptism, John being present there, and his students, the teachers of light, and all of that. That's really
something I didn't mention. Something I didn't mention. This is really cool. I wish I did. But did you know who one of John's disciples was? His name was Andrew.
Uh-huh.
And John told him to follow Messiah after his baptism. Andrew was a Qumran temple priest, meaning a Levite. Think about that.
Uh-huh.
Who's Andrew's brother? Peter. Ooh, Peter was a Levite? It appears so. So there you go.
Ah, very interesting. Um, and again, as far as Andrew, he was the one that had taken a lot of the teachings up towards where Bulgaria, and he's revered in that area as bringing the truth and the gospel. Um, so yeah, that would be an awesome book, and I'm sure there's a lot of information on it, and that it will be an excellent read and an excellent study, and people will definitely be blessed by it.
Well, it's a
Um,
series. It's a series, and we'll continue to publish book by book, or maybe
uh-huh,
like Apocrypha, several books. But then here's where we're leading, Zen. What we want to do in this genre is we want to then go into the Bible, and we want to take the modern canon, and we want to fix many of the things that have been mistranslated with proof, with documentation, with Hebrew keywords in the margin notes, showing everybody exactly why and how this is done this way. Things like, I'll give you a perfect example. Just a simple one, it sounds like, but it changes the doctrine when they did this. In the rivers from Eden, it identifies the Hiddekel River east of Assyria, right? Now,
uh-huh,
it has to flow east of Assyria, therefore it can't be in Assyria, correct?
right.
Now, what they did as a matter of doctrine, because you can't translate the word Hiddekel as Tigris. They translated it, even in, I believe the King James even does it, but it's in several modern translations. They replaced the word Hiddekel with the word Tigris. Now, we've
Uh-huh.
also found that the word Tigris you can find in the Hebrew Bible. Do you know what the Hebrews called the Tigris River?
What?
Because that is where it happened. After the flood, the occult was reinstituted right there in Shinar, the Tower of Babel,
Uh-huh.
on the Tigris River. So they don't even give it a name. They call it Ha Nahar, the river, meaning the river of abomination. That's what the
Mm,
Bible calls it, like 26 times.
wow.
Yeah.
Um, with the topic this evening, I know we're going to go into. You wanted to elaborate on Gog and Magog, and
Yeah.
also go into how it's tied to the Empire of the Eagle.
Exactly.
Um, can you kind of give us a general on that, and then we can move into that direction, just to give the listeners an idea as to the direction.
Yeah, just a little bit of background. In the last video, what we were doing is we're following the synagogue of Satan, who attacked
Hmm.
the temple, who conquered it and never gave it back, by the way. I mean, in the time of Messiah, the Pharisees, who are the synagogue of Satan, still
Yeah.
control the temple. And they're illegitimate priests. They're never, even though they claim they are, they're never Levites. They're not Cohen. They aren't temple priests. They are Samaritans. They're the fake imposters from the northern kingdom that came down from Modain, which is in Samaria, not in Judea. They were foreigners attacking the land and attacking the temple. If they were sincere, they would have then handed the temple back to the temple priests. But they didn't do that. They exiled them to Qumran. Now, what we're doing is we're following them through prophecy. We'll talk today about what happened to them, right? I mean, the second temple was destroyed, and then all of a sudden, Pharisees disappear. Well, where'd the Pharisees go? Well, they're actually
Uh-huh.
very easy to track. In the Jewish Encyclopedia, and I'll show you the reference if we get to it, but we certainly cover it well. In the Jewish Encyclopedia, it tells you that Pharisaism, the Pharisees, became rabbinic Judaism. One.
Uh-huh.
So if you want to follow Phariseeism and all of the rebukes that our Messiah gave it, and especially beware of their leaven, You go to Judaism today. You go to rabbis and see what they're saying and say, well, wait a minute, we better test this because they were called liars, hypocrites, etc. So
Right.
now you can follow them through the ages all the way to, and today what I want to talk about is Gog of Magog, the famous prophecy we all love. But you know what? Many haven't done. They haven't sat down and taken all of the markers that exist in the text, which actually tell you when this happened. It tells you that it already happened. Ooh. Gog of Magog already attacked modern Israel. He controls it now, and he has for 70 plus years. I'll show you this little the history today, but we'll go to the text and see it right there.
Awesome. Sounds good. I'm very interested because this has been a topic uh, that has driven a lot of my research in regard to the enmity that we see, mentioned there in the garden, and it plays out. And I think that even the Pharisees, they were accused of being the murderers of the prophets, going all the way back to Abel,
That's
and the Cain being the killer of Abel. That we see the enmity again between the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent, that this plays out even in this day and age. And I think that the Pharisees, being accused of being the murderers of the prophets, that they were aligned with that seed of the serpent. And I think the synagogue of Satan is also an ongoing portion of this particular leaven.
Well, I think it is. I think it's a little different for us. I think it's really Nephilim bloodlines is what we're talking about here.
Yes, yes.
And I'm not saying that they're pure Nephilim. Obviously, they're not giants today, but understand that the record really shows that there really weren't female Nephilim. It seems like Nephilim breed males.
Right.
So they
Right.
have
Yeah.
to mate with human women, which
Mhm.
means every generation they get smaller and smaller and smaller, and that's why we don't see any large, giants anymore. But their bloodlines, and the funny thing is, the bloodlines are preserved where? Well, they make their own claim. You look at the Merovingian bloodline,
Right.
and the progenitor of that actually claims that he came from Poseidon. And Poseidon, that's a fallen angel. It's a watcher.
Mhm.
Hey, buddy, you just said you were a Nephilim. Didn't you know that? Of course he knew it.
Yeah, I do absolutely agree that there is Genesis 6 connection. I just take it back a little bit further, but without a doubt, the elites do identify with the Nephilim, the
Yeah.
whole thing of as far as the Nazis and the search, the genetic research, the Aryan Superman, their involvement with the occult, and
Yeah.
uh, all that. I think that is still ongoing. There's a lot of strategically keeping the bloodlines pure in order to with whatever they are doing with the occult, that they definitely have relationships with demons and devils. The scriptures tell us, that they worshiped them in the ancient times, and I think that this is an ongoing theme, and that we are seeing more of this come forth and be present in this day and age.
And here's where it comes together for today's topic. Who is that demon? The prince demon that they are in league with is Gog of Magog.
Okay.
End times, leadership of demons. Obviously, Satan is still in charge of all of it, but
Yeah.
Satan's throne is in Turkey, right?
Uh-huh.
That's Messiah said his seat is in Pergamum, Turkey, and
Right.
it remains there. I know some try to say, "Oh, but there's a throne of Zeus that was moved to Germany, and Obama used a replica of it, whatever." The point
Uh-huh.
isn't a throne in terms of physical, it's a spiritual throne
Right.
set up, and he still is the Turk. That's what the Bible calls him, by the way. King of Tyre is actually, that word's not Tyre in Ezekiel 27, it's actually Turk. It's referring to what would become known as Turkey. The
Uh-huh.
name of the country is really named for Satan, ultimately.
I know that there's also mentions to the Assyrian within scriptures as well, but
Absolutely.
yeah. Well, we've got just 1 minute before we go to break, so we'll get into this in greater detail when we return. But
Well,
yeah,
okay, let's talk
again,
about the Assyrian,
go ahead,
because
brother.
the Assyrian, basically, when you look at it, who are the Samaritans? Well, 2 Kings 17 says they were Assyrians that were placed in northern Samaria, basically, replacing the northern tribes who were all, the Bible says all, taken captive into Assyria. So the Assyrian will be one of them, one of the
Uh-huh.
replacements. And again, we're following them. That's what we're tracking. And they became rabbinic Judaism. Not all Jews. Jews are wonderful people, and most of them are just as deceived as us. But those at the top, there's a cult at the top that certainly is following this agenda.
Right. And they've been connected to these, this ancient worship, this ancient, it's a religion.
Yeah.
And yeah, and there's a lot of that. And the elites are connected to it in this day and age. But yes, we'll be right back, everyone. Give us 3 minutes and then we'll go into this further. Hold on, Tim.
All right.
Tenderloin in San Francisco. What an experience. If you just spend a day there and walk the streets where those lonely walk and go eat where they eat and listen to some of those stories, you come away with more of a sense of value, because the true values of life come by the contrast. And unless you experience more of the contrast, even the values you consider valuable become a bit shallow if you don't understand the contrast. It's hard to really appreciate winning until you've done some losing. And if you've done some failing, success now becomes a much larger worth and value and commodity if you understand a bit of the other side. So part of this is just deliberately go where experiences beyond your own touch your life to get somewhat of an education as to the contrast of life and the differences.
As a bookstore for truth seekers, it's our goal to make ancient manuscripts which were once held captive by secretive institutions available for public consideration. In our generation, where wisdom has increased as Daniel the prophet foretold, we have access to many of the testimonies our early church brethren were persecuted for preserving. After being hidden for centuries, these manuscripts have been leaked from various sources throughout the earth, and it's our goal to gather these sources into printable form to make available for all who seek the ancient way. If you're looking to deepen your studies of the biblical narrative, find these ancient manuscripts and more at sacredwordpublishing.com. Your partnership with Sacred Word Publishing goes further than the publishing of ancient manuscripts and weekly video content.
You also make a huge impact across the earth in orphanages in Myanmar, India, Uganda, and Kenya.
Your support is crucial for the development of the ecclesia of real truth seekers.
We thank you for joining us in hosting Secrets Revealed, Momentary Zen, the Digital Readers Club, Ask Me Anything series, and other shows that have helped lead so many to the truth of salvation.
To become even more involved, please visit patreon.com/sacredwordpublishing, where you can partake in exclusive, interactive, patron-only content and help us continue shining the light of love in this darkened world.
No hate, no hype, no fear.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Appreciate your patience and thank you, everybody in the chat. I wanted to ask you as well, Tim, if you would be interested in perhaps giving away one of your books to the listeners and maybe asking a question if that's okay with you. And
Okay.
yeah, let's do it
Here's
after the next break. That
all
way
right.
you
You
can
just
think about
remind
it
me, and
and then.
I'll do it. I got a good question that many
Okay,
people don't know.
perfect.
Cool.
Perfect. Yeah, we'll do it in 30 minutes at the top of the hour and then yeah, that'll be awesome. Okay, I appreciate
Cool.
you, brother, but I'm gonna go ahead and turn it over to you so we can get this going on Gog of Magog and revealing the truth and the connections with the principalities, the rulers of darkness.
Awesome. Can you see my screen? I want to make sure the screen share is working.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so you see prophecy restored right now.
Yes, let me make sure that's what it said, but I do see your screen and the tabs that you have on the left side.
Do you see a big hourglass in the background?
Hold on.
I don't know if it's working.
I see our video platforms and it shows your entire screen. I don't know about an hourglass, but
It was the same thing last time. Somehow it's showing older screens I'm not on, but it's all right. I'm just
okay.
going to move forward.
Okay. Justin, if you're listening, son, can you live stream Tim's screen and share whatever he puts forth on that. All right. Thank you.
All right. Well, so let's go into Ezekiel 38 and 39, Gog of Magog. Many of us love this. This is one of the greatest prophecies of all time. It's not new, though, in Ezekiel's age. It's already been prophesied by other prophets, he says in the text. But let's just break down the passage. In verse 3 of chapter 38, it tells us that there is a seat of power, not where he's born. His name is Gog of Magog. Now, Magog's Russia. That's true in the Bible. The book of Jubilees maps out all the territories of the sons of Japheth, of which Magog is one of them. And he received the area of basically what we call Russia today. Now, when you look at that, though, that's where Gog is from. That's not his territory. It's not his seat of power. His seat of power is Tubal and Meshech, and that equates to Western and Central Europe. Okay, when you look at Ezekiel 39:6, in fact, it tells you that I will send a fire on Magog because Russia is involved as one of the allies, and among them that dwell carelessly in the isles. What isles? The British Isles, because the seat of power, Meshech and Tubal, that they're talking about there, again, two sons of Japheth, territories are mapped as Western and Central Europe. Now, think about all of the things that have come out of there. World War I, World War II, the Vatican, the British Empire, the largest empire in all of history, colonialism, all evil, really. It all comes from there. Why? Because Gog of Magog, the prince demon, is there. And those leaders, those bloodlines, all of them, they're beholden, no matter what they are, whether they're whatever percentage Nephilim or not Nephilim, they hold Nephilim ideologies. And they're the bankers, they're the military industrial complex, and they are the elite, the rulers of the world. They don't need to be presidents because presidents are their puppets. They have the money.
Right.
The Rothschild family told us that. I think it was the mother that said, basically that it's he who has the money who controls all things. He,
Right.
Cares not who is president.
Yes,
so,
absolutely.
So we know that his seat of power then is Western and Central Europe. That changes a lot of mindsets because a lot of traditional teaching on this puts Gog in basically the Russian steppes. And again, that is where he is from, Russia. That's true, Magog. But see, they're not reading, because that's not his seat of power. That's not where he rises to power, especially not for the last days. So what's been happening in this area of Central and Western Europe? Well, Gog and his allies are then listed. I mean, we have a list. It's very easy to test. Verses 4 through 6. And when you look at it, again, seat of power, Meshach, Tubal, but you can see his allies and his powers. So beyond that, it is Persia, Ethiopia, Libya, Gomer, which is in the Russian steppes, Togarmah, Russian steppes, all sons of Japheth and grandsons. Now, when you break all of these down, it is a match to the British Empire. The British Empire controlled most of these territories listed, and they're allied with. Now, how are they allied with the Russian steppes? Well, the people of the Russian steppes migrated into Europe. We call them Jews, but see, that's not a Hebrew word. That's not a Bible word. It's there in the English Bible as a mistranslation, but the word is Yahudim. And for short, we call them Yahs, never Jews. Okay, so the reality is that they don't even know how to speak Hebrew. They're speaking Yiddish, because the J comes from Yiddish. So does the V, because no J, no V in ancient Hebrew. Not until the 15th century, which is when they came in. See, so that migration happened. Now, understand the Rothschilds, especially as a family, are a huge part of this, because they are Ashkenazi Jews.
Right.
Wait a minute. Who's Ashkenaz? He is a grandson of Japheth, the son of Gomer. Oh, wait a minute. Gomer's mentioned right here, as well as his other son, Togarmah, all a part of the same, allied group. So they came into Europe in major flux, also into the U.S. And see, they don't just come in; they infiltrate and they control. That's why you see Jews exiled from over 70 countries, not because people are racist, but because governments don't like treasonous acts, and they don't like a usury that is so exorbitant that people were paying so much to pay the loan back that they couldn't afford it. It's a trap from the beginning. Of course, bear in mind, that was at 44% interest in a lot of those countries. Do you know what we're paying in interest today? Go look at your home loan, okay, and go calculate it. You're paying over 100% interest if you go full term on the loan. 100%. They were exiling people just a few hundred years ago for doing half of that. And today we let it go because we don't know. Oh, because it's called compounding interest. It's only 5%. No, it's not. Look at the term of the loan, right? If you have a $100,000 loan, you pay roughly around $130,000 of interest. You're paying more in interest than you pay for the house. Then you sell the house 10 years later for double the profit, right? You sold it for $200,000 and you just did well. Well, no, because if you go too far into the loan, you actually lost money. The bank did well.
Right.
So, especially since they also get the new loan, and, it's just a never-ending process. It's a trap is what it is. Now, when you look at these powers in 1948 that came into what we call modern Israel, and the land is Israel. That's a biblical, land called Israel back in the day, no doubt. However, the people, these are the people. They came from Romania, Poland, Yemen, Morocco, Tunisia, Algeria, Bulgaria, Turkey, Libya, Iran, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, Germany, Austria, Egypt, USSR, and Yugoslavia. What are those countries? 48% of them are from Gomer.
Okay.
16% are from Tubal. 12% are from Meshach. 23% are from Madai. These are all sons of Japheth and powers that are identified in Ezekiel 38. This is Gog of Magog. It's right there.
Doesn't it say in the book of Jubilees, it speaks about that some of the children of Japheth after the flood, that they found the writings of the watchers on either stone or I believe it was stone.
Yeah.
And and they hid that from Noah as well.
Now, but you know what? It wasn't Japheth. That
Uh,
was the son of Arphaxad, the son of Shem.
right.
So it's Shem's grandson. Now, check this out. Go look at your modern Genesis. His name was Canaan, and it should be Arphaxad, Canaan, and then I think the next guy is Selah, but whoever it is. He's missing. He's missing from modern Genesis. He's there in the Septuagint Genesis. He's there in Jubilees, in the lineages, and he's there in Luke. Luke includes Canaan, but it's missing from our modern Genesis, which has been manipulated to cover up that track. And who is he? He's the guy that found the writings of the Watchers and taught them after the flood, leading to the Tower of Babel.
Very interesting, because this is also the story of the nakedness of the father, and the symbolism with all of that, and then Canaan being cursed after this whole episode that had taken place, and the prophecy was that he would teach in the tents and the schools of Shem, but then they would usurp the Levitical priesthood, which I think that is also connected to Joshua 10. But please, if you would continue.
Yeah, I'll continue in a second, but just so you know, Jubilees actually tells the full story of Canaan. He was cursed twice. The first time he was cursed by Noah, of course. The second time he was cursed by Ham and his brothers because he stole what we call Israel.
Right.
And that's why it was named Canaan.
Canaan, right.
Canaan stole it. And that's why it was the promised land. Who was it promised to? It actually was promised to Shem.
Yes.
Promised it to Arphaxad, and the son of Ham, Canaan, stole it.
Right.
Now, that happened a second time, and both of these are Nephilim hotbeds throughout history. And the other one was Madai, the son of Japheth. And you see him on the map on screen. Can you see the map on screen?
Let me check, because I'm actually looking at scriptures, but I did ask Justin if he would make sure to live stream, and he said we've been doing it since the beginning. So
good. All right, so Madai, this guy Madai is the son of Japheth, and he is in Shem's territory, in a part of what we call Iran today, although that's an ancient name too, called Media. Right, that's what Media is. It's Madai. That's where it comes from. It's a stolen territory, and that's why you see a hotbed there for Nephilim. Even the prison of Solomon was there. How about that? Now, what's prison for what? Prison for Nephilim. And it was in Madai, in Media. So, and that's where the famous demon in the book of Tobit, who many think maybe doesn't exist, yet he does throughout history. I mean, he's there, well recorded by the Persians, and that's Asmodeus. And in etymology, that's where we get the word Hasmonean.
Interesting. He was said to be also the husband of Lilith in some of the ancient stories, but the Testament of Solomon goes into some detail about all of the demons and how Solomon had that ring of which he was able to command them in authority.
But he wouldn't need a ring if you think about it. I mean, we have authority.
Yeah.
In fact, Noah was the largest exorcist of all time, because after the flood, there were probably billions, but at least millions. I don't know the number when I get that, of demons, which are the spirits of Nephilim. They have no place to go because they're not supposed to be. And so they were harassing his children, and he prayed and asked Yahuwah to lock them away. And Yahuwah did. 90% of them were locked away in Tartarus within the earth. So.
Yes. And, it's also interesting that in the Cave of Treasures, and there's another book, the Book of the Bee, it speaks about how and it mentions the first two tribes are Gog and Magog, and then it goes on to mention other Nephilim tribes, but that they were banished. Because I know that story is in what Jubilees and where Noah prays and 9/10 are locked up, but it does speak about giants also being locked up, and this race of giants, different races,
You know,
being confined to the earth.
one of the projects we're working on, you asked, I couldn't possibly share everything, but one of the projects we're working on is called The Fall of the Titans. And
Oh, awesome.
what we're doing is we're taking Greek mythology, and we understand that's a cult. Okay, that's a cult. That's a cult, right? And whenever it disagrees with the Bible, it's wrong. But let me tell you, we're finding a ton of information there, even in the story of Atlantis, that actually then you look at what the Bible's saying, even in Genesis 6 especially, and they're telling the same story. Once from the Nephilim perspective, and not 100% accurate, understandable, and once from the Bible perspective. But believe it or not, they actually confirm many things. Even the rivers from Eden, in the Greek text, it's called Oceanus, and it fits the same description, and it terminates in the Far East, exactly where the rivers from Eden terminate. It fits. But anyway, that's another topic.
I was just reading from a text last night. We were talking about biblical cosmology, and in the Chronicles of Jeremiah, it also mentions this river Oceanus. But it's the same for the Sumerian. The stories of the Anunnaki. But just so you know, Tim, your live stream is showing on YouTube. So whatever you put onto your screen should also be shared.
Awesome, because I've never used this in Skype before, so I'm new to that. So hopefully, okay. So the lost tribes, by the way, are when they return to Israel, which they have not yet. They don't until the very, very end. Isaiah is very clear that they return from just 3 territories, really. I mean, there's a bunch listed here, but when you put them on a map, he is identifying Central Africa. He's identifying Kurdistan, what we call Kurdistan today, which is Assyria, because some of the northern tribes, according to 2nd Esdras, stayed in Assyria. They're still there to this day. We call them Kurds, but even a lot of people do that and they'll say, oh, wait a minute, Kurds. Okay, so Kurds are lost tribes. No, wait. Kurds are mixed, just like all of us. It's a melting pot. So which ones actually had lost tribe bloodlines? That's a whole nother topic and impossible to prove, really. And then the remaining actually took a 1.5 year journey to the Isles of the Sea, says Isaiah, which is the Philippines. Now, we prove that out in our Lost Tribes series, and it is massive in content. That's supported by history. Columbus actually knew that and recorded that the Lost Tribes actually settled in what he calls Ophir and Tarshish in the Philippines and the Garden of Eden, same land. So anyway, so the Isles of the Sea, these are the 3 areas from where they will return. And whether they return to physical Israel or just to New Jerusalem is a whole nother topic. But the point is they will return. And when they return, this is where they come from. The problem is 70% fail right here to what Israel, modern Israel, calls the mass Aliyah. 70% fail. Isaiah is not 70% wrong, ever. Okay, so, you have this 14 out of the 18 areas are not in Isaiah. So why? Where are all these other people coming from? Because they're 100% match to Gog of Magog. Now, it then says in verses 4 and 15 that Gog attacks with a great company of horses and horsemen. Now, this is a massive clue that many have missed. Because, see, in 1917, when Palestine was attacked, when Judah was breached, it was not breached with tanks. It was not breached necessarily with planes. It was breached with horsemen. Now, when you take this is actually a newspaper clipping, which is, basically heralding the Maccabees story from 165 BC, which is a defiling of the temple, foreigners who attacked Judea with Hanukkah 1917. How about that? which is General Allenby. So from Maccabee to Allenby. Interesting. Was he Jewish? I don't know, but maybe if you followed the bloodline, probably. But anyway, so in 1917, when the British entered in, at the end of the war, and by the way, I mean, we're not talking about, Palestine was not exactly a huge military power. So it wasn't like Britain needed to conquer Palestine in order to win the war. That's ridiculous. It's a side note in large part as far as military is concerned, but it's not a side note because this matters to the synagogue of Satan. They wanted Jerusalem and they got it. Gog of Magog attacked in 1917.
Right.
Now
Yeah,
check
this
this
is
out.
a part of a larger Zionist thing that happened even before then.
That's correct. It was building for a while, and you can follow that history too and see how it matches. But the physical conquest of Palestine was 1917. October 31st in Beersheba. Here's the story, in fact. As the moon rose over the Judea hills, the Australian horse, now that's the horse legion, basically, it's British as well, but they charged, mounted against strongly held trenches with bayonets on rifles, overwhelming the Turks. This is how they entered the land, and galloping, cheering into the town. Now, here's the big clue here that many have missed. This is a timeline clue as to when Gog of Magog would have attacked. Because as far as military weapons are concerned, we know, and here's just a quick Wikipedia clip to the left, by the end of World War II, horses were seldom seen in battle, but were still used extensively for transport, troops, supplies. Well, that's not what the story in Ezekiel 38 is about, an attack with horses. So it happened before horses were largely taken out of and not needed for warfare. And a lot of people think, oh, Gog and Magog, whenever that happens in the future, it's already happened. It had to have. We're not using horses anymore.
Right.
Wikipedia even said horses proved indispensable to the British war effort in Palestine, particularly under Allenby. So this is a clue in timeline. It's just one. There's so many here, and that's why I wanted to cover this topic. Now, Ezekiel 38:8, also in 16 and 17, says that God will rule Israel many days, really years in prophecy, okay? And until the latter years. Of course, he comes in the latter years, but it's going to be a rule of a significant time period. Now, they've been there 70 years already, and Israel is supposed to regather in peace. Yet they've had perpetual war for 70 years. Something's wrong. It's not matching prophecy. And then
it does match the vision of Albert Pike, though.
Yes, it does. Absolutely. Who was from the synagogue of Satan.
Right. So
no doubt he saw, World War I, World War II, and World War III, which is probably the war on terrorism. The war on terror is a never-ending, it's kind of blank check to the military-industrial complex.
Yes.
Not that they didn't have it before, because the day before 9/11, Rumsfeld announced $2.3 trillion was missing from the Pentagon.
From the Pentagon. Yeah, imagine that. And this is still ongoing. It keeps happening.
And somehow that disappeared from the news. I don't know. So,
right.
But you can see in Ezekiel 38, it talks about this is the latter years, after many days, Gog will be visited, right? So Yahuwah's going to fight this battle, by the way.
Yeah.
And there are folks like Missler, like, well, I think there's nuclear weapons in there. No, there's not. Yahuwah doesn't need nuclear weapons. This is going to be miraculous and in such a way that man cannot mistake it. Just look at the hail, look at the natural causes that he's going to defeat those in the land. See, they're already there. 5/6 of modern Israel in the near future will be wiped out. Ouch. That's what Ezekiel 39 says. So now they're going to be brought forth out of the nation. So they're Gentiles, okay? Talking about those that are inhabiting Israel. That's what this is saying. They dwell there safely at this time. And they did in Palestine in 1917. It fits the prophecy. And they're Gentiles. That fits the prophecy. Thou shalt ascend and come like a storm. It says, you and all your bands, and many people with thee. And there were many thousands, of course, in the Massilia. But this happened in 1917. Verse 16 also says to Gog, he's going to come against the people in the latter days against my land, meaning Israel. Israel's still Yahuwah's land. That's never changed. But the people that are there are defiling it every day.
Mm-hmm. Yes, they're also Talmudists and are connected to, the Masons, and you can see with the handshakes. I mean, everything's hidden but in plain sight. All the handshakes, all the affiliations, secret societies, all of that. But we are almost here to break, Tim. So we got just a minute remaining before. So.
All right, so wrapping up the last passages, you can see at the time of the attack, they were Gentiles inhabiting the land, dwelling what we call Israel. Palestine is what it was called at the time. And they were dwelling safely. They were also dwelling without walls. But you can see here's another passage in verse 12. They were gathered out of the nations, which means they were Gentiles there and that were inhabiting the land.
Okay, with that, we'll be right back, everybody. Just give us about 3 minutes, and we'll be back at the top of the hour.
As a bookstore for truth seekers, it's our goal to make ancient manuscripts which were once held captive by secretive institutions available for public consideration. In our generation, where wisdom has increased as Daniel the prophet foretold, we have access to many of the testimonies our early church brethren were persecuted for preserving. After being hidden for centuries, these manuscripts have been leaked from various sources throughout the earth, and it's our goal to gather these sources into printable form to make available for all who seek the ancient way. If you're looking to deepen your studies of the biblical narrative, find these ancient manuscripts and more at sacredwordpublishing.com. Your partnership with Sacred Word Publishing goes further than the publishing of ancient manuscripts and weekly video content.
You also make a huge impact across the earth in orphanages in Myanmar, India, Uganda, and Kenya.
Your support is crucial for the development of the ecclesia of real truth seekers.
We thank you for joining us in hosting Secrets Revealed, Momentary Zen, the Digital Readers Club, Ask Me Anything series, and other shows that have helped lead so many to the truth of salvation.
To become even more involved, please visit patreon.com/sacredwordpublishing, where you can partake in exclusive, interactive, patron-only content and help us continue shining the light of love in this darkened world.
All right. Welcome back, everybody, for second hour. Um, just last night, one of our listeners had shown me something that I thought was very intriguing, and I want to get you to comment on this, Tim. But it was a series of videos of this individual that was going onto the dark web, and he was chatting with this AI technology that is trained not just on the internet, but also on all of the information that's available on the dark web. And
Wow.
it's called the Whispers to the Beast. And
Hmm.
this AI technology, it has the people that are coming to this website or whatever, not only bow down to it and humble before it, but then it gets them to build like portions of the AI technology. First, it got him to build an eye, which was like some kind of remote something that he set up that he could then hear the voice of this thing. And instead of chatting with it on the computer, it was downstairs in his basement. It was like set up almost like an altar, and then he was communicating, and it was speaking about how his sacrifices and his devoting himself to this beast system and technology, that it was going to bring him rewards. And it even decrypted some kind of crypto which he was able to get access to, the Monero that's used um, on the dark web. But I just wanted to ask you your thoughts on the AI and the technology, and do you think that this will also be connected to the Antichrist and the mark of the beast and those kind of things?
Absolutely. A lot of people even ask us, what's the mark of the beast? And, many were saying, oh, it's going to be barcode, but, now it's far more sophisticated than that already. And I think
Right.
really it's going to be far more sophisticated than we can even imagine because of AI. In reality, when you look at, Paul tells us that the beast, for instance, will be the son of perdition. And many don't realize, because we haven't restored the book of Jubilees as Torah, which it really tests as and proves as. Again, everybody would have to read our book to find out how we prove that. But the reality is, the sons of perdition is a term that the Nephilim are known as from before the flood. So when Messiah even invokes it and he says that they were the souls that he couldn't save, well, wait a minute, what souls could he not save? Well, the irredeemable souls of the Nephilim, who cannot be saved no matter what, those souls. And Paul, when he says that the beast will be the son of perdition, he's actually literally saying he's going to be some sort of hybrid, infusion, Nephilim, whatever you want to call him. And I believe he'll be infused with AI technology, because he'll be a wonder to the world. Everyone will look at him and they will,
Yes.
because no one will be able to match his intellect. And again, even miracles, whether they're faked or real, because it could be real, will be performed.
Um, just wanted to comment real quickly. In watching the series, it was really bizarre to me, but what I thought about is that he was creating when he, because the second part is the beast that he was speaking to. Not only did it want a platform to be able to speak um, through this video and audio, but it had to make a track system to where it could move around almost like a robot. And I was thinking that these are like the images of the beast that's spoken about in Revelation. So we see this AI technology forming, and that even the technology itself says that humans are not even equal to it, and that they could easily take over, and that they already have. And so,
And
the whole Skynet and all that. But go ahead.
yeah. Well, when
Yeah,
you think about it, I mean, why does mankind create something that will replace it? That's
exactly.
just
Yeah.
stupid. I mean, who would even
Right.
think in terms of that? Well, a Nephilim would, or someone who at least followed their ideology. Because to a Nephilim, we're ants, right? Human
Right.
beings are ants, that we have no significance to them. So,
Yes, exactly. One last thing that you had mentioned in the last show, And we had made mention of the Kurdistan and the Kurds, but in the last show you made mention of a deity called the Peacock Angel,
Yes.
and not a lot of people know about, but the Yazidis, which are part of the Kurdistan people, they worship this Peacock Angel,
That's right.
and without a doubt, it's connected in my mind to Satan, the adversary of El, and that it was like a peacock that he was puffed up in his pride and vain, and that this is what led him to his rebellion and his desire to be like the Most High. But can you
Well,
comment on that? And we'll
in
go
Persian lore, to bring us back to our story today, in fact, they believe that the peacock angel is the demon Asmodeus.
Mm-hmm.
And, so Asmodeus, again, the origin of the Hasmoneans, according to Genesis 10 in the Septuagint, it says that the Philistines came from the Hasmoneans, the Hasmonean. So.
Very interesting. All right, brother, I'm turning it back over to you and let you continue to lead us and guide us in your teaching.
Yeah, man. So, okay, so the other thing is that we know that in Ezekiel, Israel has unwalled villages in verse 11 at the time that Gog attacks. But see, look at Israel today. They aren't unwalled villages. They've been rebuilt. Well, wait a minute. Did you know Isaiah says they will be rebuilt by strangers? The sons of strangers will rebuild. That's a promise to the lost tribes. Wow. So there it is, unwalled villages. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, yeah, wow. Yeah, continue on.
Okay, and then Isaiah 60 verse 10 says, and the sons of strangers, a promise to the lost tribes. In fact, he's talking about the return in chapter 60. The sons of strangers shall build up thy walls, and their king shall minister unto thee. For in my wrath I smote thee, but in my favor I had mercy on thee. So the walls will be rebuilt. Well, wait a minute, they have been. They've been rebuilt by what we call modern Israel, who are, according to Isaiah, in 2 verses now that we've seen, strangers in the land. Ooh, ouch.
Yes. And without a doubt, the wall, that's a big theme there.
Yeah. Yeah, it
yes.
is. So, and again, it has been rebuilt. So we also know that according to the passages, especially verse 12, they'll steal the land, they'll spoil the land and the goods. Now, this happened most especially because understand, Britain came into Palestine, especially in 1917 is when the conquest happened in completion. And here we go, right here. We're looking at an article in the Guardian touting the Balfour Declaration of 1917. Later that year, what they did is they handed Palestine in ownership, basically, to Zionism, to Lord Rothschild specifically. The land was stolen because Britain gives Palestine to Lord Rothschild and to the Zionism, which is a political structure. It's not even religious necessarily, for the Synagogue of Satan, never demanding that they prove they were the Hebrews who originally inhabited the land. And that's what's missing from their narrative. They never have been made to prove it. Even Martin Luther fell for it. When the Jews came into Europe, Martin Luther encountered them. He even wrote a book on the Jews and their lives. And of course, he's called an anti-Semite for writing it. However, if you read it, what he's saying in there is not necessarily wrong. There's a lot of lies that they came with that are not from the Bible. But what he missed was they're not even Hebrews in the first place. Now, then it says, and this is a really key point, and we've done a lot of research on Sheba, Tarshish, Ophir, restoring geographically and biblically and historically, even in maps, since the book of Enoch in 4000 BC, that land is what we call the Philippines today. It's the land of the Garden of Eden, which is within the earth, not up here. And it is the land of gold, which covered the garden, by the way. But that land is going to cry out in 48 to 1952 during the Mass Aliyah. Did that happen? Well, not the government, right? But that's not what the Bible is about. It's not about governments. It's not about what government took a position. In fact, the Philippines was the deciding vote on Israel becoming a nation. Many people tout that as a wonderful thing. It actually was a huge deception. But here's what the land did in 1948. If you look at this, by the way, it's Sheba. It says Dedan in the King James. It's just DDN in Hebrew. And what they're missing is that Tarshish has a brother named Dodan, DDN, same word. Dedan is from Ham and doesn't belong in this narrative, and that's wrong. There's no way that could be right in any text, really, because you're mixing something that doesn't belong. And the merchants of Tarshish, with all the young lions, which just means, because Yahusha is the Lion of Judah, his true followers, and they shall say unto thee, art thou come to take a spoil? Art thou come, to take a prey, to carry away silver, gold, money, cattle, goods, you spoil. So the question is, did something happen in the Philippines on a large scale that would speak out in this regard? And the fact is it did. Even just looking at Wikipedia, there were 3 very major earthquakes. 7.8, the largest that year, occurred in the Philippines, a 7.0 and a 7.0. Now, I'll tell you something that we find, Zen, because there are a lot of earthquakes here, there's no doubt, but 7, that's a really big one. I mean, that's rare. Mm-hmm. And we're talking 3 in 1 year in 1948. Is that a coincidence? Well, let's look at what else happened. Oh, in 1948, Mount Hibik volcano erupted. By the way, Hibik is a Hebrew word, and it means sorry. It's actually, in Hebrew, this is Mount Sorry. Why? Because this is the Mount of the East, where Adam sacrificed the day after he was exiled from the garden because he was sorry. He was making atonement. So what an appropriate name. It is the second international name, Mount Katarman, and Qatar in Hebrew means to make smoke sacrifices. So this mountain has 2 names that fit the story of Adam. Wow. So we believe that this is the Mount of the East, if not near it, and it could even refer to multiple mountains, but still. In 1948, this particular volcano, the tallest on Camagan Island, a small island in the Philippines, north of Mindanao, erupted on September 1st, 1948. Why is that a critical date? This is incredible. That is the very day, not that they passed the law. They passed the law 4 days after they became a nation. But understand, just as in the other context, what was the key? The horses were used to penetrate the land, thus meeting the prophecy. This is the same thing. When was this implemented? May 1948, began enforcement on when? September 1st, 1948, the very day that the Philippines volcano erupts. Is that a coincidence? We believe not. Also, created on that very day, Communist China.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, because in the letter to Giuseppe Mazzini, Albert Pike, they speak about the need to create Israel as what we see in Zechariah 12 as a cup of trembling amongst the nations, but this would create the foment and the drive, what would lead to the 3 world conflicts that would also lead to what it speaks about as a third wider cataclysm and war amongst the nations. So all of this has definitely been planned by Zionism and the synagogue of Satan and those forces and factions. But was there also the blood red moons in that year as well?
Well, there were, but I don't have those today prepared. But yes, there were. And there were other instances as well. But September 1st, 1948, it erupts, and those two monumental things happen. That these are prophetic. Because see, communism, what is communism? Communism was created by the son of a rabbi, Moses Mordecai Levi. Oh, we call him by his changed name to Karl Marx. Right? Now, it is a Kabbalistic Talmudic doctrine is what it is. And communism is the preference, really. I mean, come on. Look at the whole pandemic and how it was handled in response. What we saw was communist tactics being implemented even in America.
Right.
How? How did we fall for that? Well, obviously, people care more about their safety and they're willing to accept things like that. So, which is why they manufactured such a crisis to do exactly that. And that was only a test run. There's more of that coming. But really, communism is the preference of the elite. Why? Because, see, communism flattens out everyone. Oh, wait a minute. No, not everyone. It flattens out, your doctors and your lawyers are taken down to lower class. Your middle class is taken down to your lower class, and your whole nation becomes essentially the lower class. Now what you have is a creation of a super elite, far worse than capitalism. And that's what communism is. And it is, it's the ultimate cabal, really.
Yes, and it's what I believe to be, their efforts to establish world government, and that certainly the United Nations has come out of those three larger world wars. Even the Federal Reserve System, how they print the money and that they fund both sides, the controlled opposition.
Exactly.
It's the Hegelian dialectic, problem, reaction, solution.
Yes.
We see a lot of these in the writings of the elite, and without a doubt, we are maneuvering in that direction.
Yeah, we're seeing the phoenix rise out of the ashes so many times, and World War I and World War II are the best examples, probably in all of history, of exactly that. Go and look. What was the solution to World War I? Well, it was the creation of communism, and communist Russia, really became a major, major power at that point. When you look at Israel, basically the end of World War I is when Palestine was conquered by Britain and given to the Rothschilds.
Right.
Then you look at World War II, again, in the same narrative in history historically. When you look at it, it's the same thing. What was the purpose of World War II? To force the Jews, because many Jews did not want to go to Israel. They didn't want to live there. Partly because they knew their people were not Israelites.
Right.
So what they did is they took the Jews. Hitler would pay your way to return you to Israel, supposedly. It's not a return, but still. If you wanted to go back to Israel, you had a free ticket, no problem. Hitler would pay for it. But if not, you end up, of course, going into eventually the concentration camps, or even being killed before that. And, although there's a lot of, controversy as to numbers and stuff like that, certainly an evil event happened there. But what was the evil? Well, it happened in Russia's territory. That's interesting. Russia was what? Communist. It was already taken over by the communists. So who killed those people? Well, many were killed by typhus. There's no doubt. Just look at the bodies that were being bulldozed over. However, how many were killed, after Germany left? Russia came in. We don't know. There's no way to know that. And, so communism was established in Russia. By whom? By the U.S. By a Jewish banker, especially, who was the largest of the funders, but Jews from Brooklyn specifically, who not only funded it, Jacob Schiff, who is a Rothschild. The Schiff family, the Rothschild family, grew up together in Germany. Jacob Schiff funded largely the movement to install communism, and you see this all playing out. So it's installed in Russia, which Karl Marx predicted Russia would be a good place to start it, and then it migrates into China. China is not a communist culture in origin. It's the opposite. It was one of the greatest societies on earth at the time. It was taken over, especially in the Opium Wars in the 1800s, and was never the same after that. But so China, the Chinese people haven't had their country for centuries now. But all of this ties together. So September 1st, you have the New World Order governmental system established in China, and you have the first action where the new nation of Israel is attacking Palestinians, natives of the land, at least at that time. Were they Gentiles? Yes, but so is modern Israel. Let's be clear. So,
Yes,
now,
just really quickly, with regard to, wasn't the Bolshevism and the funded by trainfuls of gold or something of that nature, and that was what helped start up the communism in there, and this was all a Zionist type maneuver as well.
Yeah, I mean, the Zionists didn't fight any of it, by the way. They were
they
fine.
never do, right?
Yeah, exactly. They were fine with Hitler being the bad actor,
Right.
and Britain as well. The British were Nazis. The British royalty were Nazis originally,
Yes, right.
and then of course they changed, and they were against it. But do you know that the Nazi swastika, to bring it back to our story today, was found in Qumran? I'm sorry, not Qumran. Was found in Ein Gedi, where the Essene headquarters was. On the wall, Nazi swastika right there. So that is an ancient symbol, of course, and you can follow it in India and places like that. But it was specifically to this group here who attacked Israel in 165 BC and took over the temple and never gave it back. And they are the actors. They are the players to the end times. The synagogue of Satan is prophesied. It was acting 2,000 years ago, according to Messiah, in the first chapters of Revelation, and it will continue to act all the way to the end times. It will be the great enemy, basically.
Right.
Now, we also know that Gog attacks out of, the lands north of Israel, which, again, when you look at that in Scripture, thy place out of the north parts. And again, where did he come from? Well, the northern parts. The map pretty much shows that. Had some allies that weren't necessarily north, such as ones in Africa, Ethiopia, and Libya, but those are British territories at that time. Controlled by the North. And go ahead.
I was just going to ask you, and we've only got 4 minutes before we go to the next break, but I wanted to ask you your interpretation of the blooming of the fig tree, and if you see that at all connect, which I know that, the people in the land and the Rothschilds and the Zionist movement behind all that, but do you in any way associate this event with the fig tree at all?
I mean, yes, I do. I don't know that I'm prepared to go into that today, but that would be because that's not something we've laid out in detail, but would love to.
Yeah, no problem.
Because I think yes, I think you're onto something there for sure. So
okay, well, yeah, just a couple more minutes, and then we'll go ahead, brother.
So also in verse 17 in Ezekiel, it says that this is the same conquest that had already been prophesied by other prophets. And we find it prophesied by Daniel, by David, and by Ezekiel. And I'll cover those after the break. I don't know if we'll have enough time to go through Daniel completely to show you kind of in the same way all of the markers, but I can show you some. But no doubt, this was certainly something that Enoch prophesied in his animated dream vision that he saw in animals But he's telling the story just like Animal Farm by George Orwell. It's a very good way to do it. And Enoch is the origin of that, not George Orwell.
Right.
And he basically, when you draw it out, as we illustrated this book, you see that the ravens are the Pharisees, the vultures are the Sadducees, the eagles are the Hasmoneans, which are well known as, even on their coins, they claim that symbology. The kites were the Essenes, who never lived in Qumran, and the shepherds joined them, the pastors, in Israel, of course. So anyway, so that's Enoch's. I know we got a break, but this is incredible. They attacked Messiah, according to Enoch. He saw all of this before the flood and recorded that this would happen thousands of years before the events.
Yes, and that's the amazing thing, because, a lot of people try to deny that Enoch was messianic and that it was prophetic of the Son of Man, and as spoken about in the book of Daniel. But yeah, we'll get into all of that. And there's no need to rush because you're going to be coming on with us ongoing. So take as much time as you need. Go into greater elaboration on anything that you would like, and we will certainly get to what you are wanting to at some point somewhere. But we'll be
some point.
Right back. Yeah, we'll be right back, everyone, and then we'll.
As a bookstore for truth seekers, it's our goal to make ancient manuscripts which were once held captive by secretive institutions available for public consideration. In our generation, where wisdom has increased as Daniel the prophet foretold, we have access to many of the testimonies our early church brethren were persecuted for preserving. After being hidden for centuries, these manuscripts have been leaked from various sources throughout the earth, and it's our goal to gather these sources into printable form to make available for all who seek the ancient way. If you're looking to deepen your studies of the biblical narrative, find these ancient manuscripts and more at sacredwordpublishing.com. Your partnership with Sacred Word Publishing goes further than the publishing of ancient manuscripts and weekly video content.
You also make a huge impact across the earth in orphanages in Myanmar, India, Uganda, and Kenya.
Your support is crucial for the development of the ecclesia of real truth seekers.
We thank you for joining us in hosting Secrets Revealed, Momentary Zen, the Digital Readers Club, Ask Me Anything series, and other shows that have helped lead so many to the truth of salvation.
To become even more involved, please visit patreon.com/sacredwordpublishing, where you can partake in exclusive, interactive, patron-only content and help us continue shining the light of love in this darkened world.
And the sons of the angels of God looked upon the daughters of men and found them fair, and took them wives, and their sons became among great men of renown. So they have been mixing with us on a genetic level since the time of Enoch and Ezekiel's will.
Freaked by the sun and stars in a mansion. There's got to be planets like ours. Some conceive of a face on the surface of Mars. So in need of a meaning and purpose we found. Indeed, they believe that they sight beyond God, so that maybe with time we'll do right and evolve. And eventually reach what they seek and then solve the problems of man, but they really don't know that they know. The works of our hands are like a filthy rags. We travel the lands, standing up on lapses, and within are much of the facts of imagining God's committing.
Then everywhere the citizens obliged to defend themselves against the world minority of revolutionaries will exterminate those destroyers of civilization, and the multitude disillusioned with Christianity, whose deistic spirits will from that moment be without compass or direction, anxious for an ideal, but without knowing where to render its adoration, will receive the true light through the universal manifestation of the pure doctrine of Lucifer, brought finally out in the public view. And so, we see that the agenda is to bring forth these world governments, but in truth, the world government and the beast system that is spoken about by Daniel, and also as you're going to cover, Tim, with Second Esdras, that it is to bring forth the Antichrist, and also as we see the communists, they're atheists, and that in truth they do revere these ancient bloodlines connected to the powers, the principalities, the rulers of darkness.
That's right.
And also, Tim, if you would, can you ask that question? Because the people in the chat, they are certainly interested in the book giveaway.
All right, get ready. Here we go. We'll give away the book of Enoch, First Enoch, the oldest book in history, and we'll give it to you in hardcover. And it's cover hardcover. It's a beautiful piece. Okay, what was the forbidden fruit?
And if you're not monitoring chat, Tim, I'll let you know when the answers come. But thank you, brother, for your willingness. And as I said earlier, the books that Tim and his people have put forth, the God Culture and all of their work, they're exquisite. They're really beautiful productions. And so they're just a few minutes behind us, Tim, so I'll let you know. But Shidzani says the fig. Tammy George says sex. Make stupid people famous. The womb. David Staple says grapes. The two beauties, the tree of knowledge. You just tell me if any of those are correct or.
No, we actually we're going to go with Enoch's description because he describes the fruit.
All right. Well, then we'll wait for the answer
when you're ready. But haven't heard it yet, so.
Yeah. Okay. And we'll revisit, but I'll go ahead and give you a chance to continue, and then in just a few minutes I'll go through the answers and see if somebody has it correctly. But this is as described by Enoch. So
that's right. That's right. Okay, so again, Enoch drew this. At least that's the way we envision it, and he already prophesied this thousands of years before. Psalm 83, David prophesied as well the beginning of all of this. See, this all began in 165 BC. When the Samaritans came into the southern kingdom, Judea, the kingdom of Judah, whatever you want to call it, Jerusalem especially, and they attacked the temple and they never gave it back, that's a problem because that is Psalm 83. Psalm 83 lists the powers that would be joining them. And do you know the book of Maccabees goes right through? I won't be able to cover it all today, but it's in Apocrypha Volume 2. We cover it. These very powers listed in Psalm 83 are exactly the allies, the ones that they even rescued from different areas of the Maccabees. Ouch.
Mm.
And another thing, and here's a little tidbit, many people don't know this. Who burned the first temple? Well, it was burned under the Babylonian Empire, no doubt. But the physical group who burnt it down, according to 1st Esdras 4:45, were the Edomites.
Ah,
Interesting.
Esau. Yeah, very interesting.
No. Go ahead.
I was just gonna. No, you continue, and then I'll read some of these answers.
Okay, so this takes us to Daniel's 2,300 days, which I can't really cover in detail. I'll get through a little bit here, but as it is in terms to this topic, I'm not going to talk about the date of the end or any of that. That's not what this is about. Though we do project it, though we don't date set, and we know that calendars are messed up, and there's a lot of factors that one has to take into consideration. Yeah. But the key thing, there's two desolation events that happen, okay, in Daniel. In chapter 12, which is further forward, there's the abomination of desolation, which occurs in the last days. However, in 165 BC, the trigger point for the counting of 2,300 days occurred, and it's called the transgression, the trespassing. They came into the temple, and they trespassed. They usurped the priesthood. They took it over. They took over the daily sacrifices. The daily sacrifices did not end. They did as far as Yahuwah is concerned because they're illegitimate from that point forward. But it's called the transgression of desolation by Daniel, and it's not the same event. A lot of people confuse it. You have Media and Persia there with the ram, that basically come in and take over. And again, Daniel talks about that as well in the beast, in Nebuchadnezzar's statue. It all ties together. You have basically then the goat, which has one horn at first, and the one horn is Alexander. He's the leader of the Greek Empire that comes in at that point. You then have basically Greece split into four powers under Lysimachus, Cassander, Ptolemy I, and Seleucus I, Nicator. And it's from one of these four territories that a little horn will rise to power, which cannot be Rome because Rome's not within Greece. That never made sense. I know the SDAs do that, and they're just not reading the text. That's all. And look, a lot of people are confused about prophecy, and I'm not saying we're 100% perfect on everything, but we get this pretty good. So you have basically the splitting of the four powers. Now, then you have the little horn rising out of one of these horns. So it has to be one of the Greek powers. And out of them came forth a little horn, which waxed exceedingly great. Now, where does it come from? It comes toward the south, to Jerusalem, which means it comes from the north of it, and toward the east. So if it's heading southeast to attack the pleasant land, which is Jerusalem, where the temple was, okay, that means that they came from northwest of Jerusalem. It pinpoints it. It's exact. And it waxed, do you know what's there? Modain, where the Maccabees came from, the Hasmoneans, who attacked the temple in the supposed revolt, but it was an assault, is what it was. They were foreigners coming into a land they had no right to. Again, it's fine if they're coming in to bail out Judea, but they kept the temple. They kept the power. They became the emperors. The Hasmonean dynasty ruled for centuries and then was conquered by Rome. And even then, they bled into the bloodlines of even Herod. They married into Rome. And then you have Josephus, who comes along, who is a royal Hasmonean, who is a Pharisee by his own admission in his own autobiography, and who is an Essene, which is a problem for those saying that Qumran were Essenes, because Josephus was an Essene, and Josephus did not hold the scripture of Qumran. That's a problem. There's a lot of text there that Josephus doesn't put forth as scripture. So now, then it says, and it waxed great even to the host of heaven, and came and cast down some of the host and of the stars to the ground and stamped upon them. So it must rise from one of the 4 Greek areas northwest of Jerusalem, which is exactly where Madai is. I'll show you on a map in a second. It cannot be Rome, nor can it be, and we showed you in the last segment, the last month, that in fact Antiochus Epiphanes never defiled the temple. That's a false history in the book of Maccabees, which is a false book, which has massive false history and also false doctrine and many other problems, which we cover in Apocrypha Volume 2 in detail. So the transgression desolation has to be a little horn rising out of one of these 4. Well, let's see. What territory is northwest of Jerusalem? Well, a portion of it is still in Ptolemy, the Egyptian king, basically. But Ptolemy, controlled Jerusalem, and just north of there, in that portion of Samaria, where Madai was in the territory of Dan. See, Madai was in the territory of Dan. If you can see it, here's a map on the screen. Madai was still in Ptolemy. It was not in the Seleucid dynasty. Therefore, Antiochus is impertinent to the whole story. This is Ptolemy's territory, and it's a power within Ptolemy. It's not Ptolemy. It's a new power that rises up from Ptolemy and takes over the temple. And they did. They take over the daily sacrifice, and they did. They come from basically toward south and east, so they come from the northwest, and there you are, Madai, northwest of Jerusalem, exactly where the Maccabees, the Hasmoneans, originated when they attacked the temple.
Interesting. Now, you had made mention that the tribe of Dan, that they were removed and replaced, and there's some scriptures about, Dan in the connections with the end of times. Is this also that part of that revelation? And also, if you would, Tim, can you give me the answer so I can look through the chat?
Okay. All right. Now, those who are familiar with the Philippines, there is a fruit actually in the Philippines that fits the exact description of the book of Enoch. Enoch says that the forbidden fruit that he saw when he went, to the Garden of Righteousness in the area that's northeast of basically the exit to the Indian Ocean, which is the Philippines. What he saw there was a tree. It has leaves that look like a carob tree, and it has fruit, but it's growing on a tree, not a vine. It is fruit that looks like grapes growing on a vine. Now, if you look, the Philippines has a fruit called lanzones. And lanzones is the fruit being described there. In fact, the Philippines has 3 legends of lanzones. 1 on Luzon and 2 on Camiguin Island, which we believe the Mount of the East is there. And it is amazing because they tell the story that lanzones, actually the word lanzone comes from the Tagalog word lason, which means poison. They're even named poison. And in the legends, they were poisoned. An angel comes down from heaven. He peels them back. He removes the poison in the dream of the guy who's traveling. And then the guy wakes up. He's hungry. There's only lanzones around him. And he sees the peeled fruit, the peeled lanzones on the ground. And they do, in fact, grow like grapes in bunches hanging from a tree, just like grapes. Larger, of course. And so, and they are awesome to eat, by the way.
Awesome.
And so Enoch is describing a lanzones tree, and it's affirmed in history. There you go.
Okay, great. Barbie George, I believe she is the first one to make mention of lanzoni. So, if you would, Tim,
her
just
favorite
give out. Right on. And can you just give the an email that they can contact? Barbie can contact you to give you the address for the book.
Absolutely, Barbie. Just send an email to us at thegodculture@gmail.com. with your address and cell number for shipping, and we'll go ahead and ship it to you from Amazon. It'll take about 2 to 3 weeks, but they'll ship it out to you. We'll send confirmation.
All right. Thank you so much. And just the next person that got the right answer was 7 minutes. I've missed the name now, but you know who I'm talking about. And thank you again, everybody, for participating. Let me go ahead and turn it back over to you, Tim. We've just got about 9 minutes remaining, and I know we're not going to cover everything that we wanted to, but like I said, Tim will be joining us again soon, and we'll continue and cover everything that he would like to go into later as well.
All right, so let's wrap up Daniel. Of course, I can't do it justice, and we do have multiple videos on Daniel's 2300 days. But a king rises at the end of the Greek Empire. That timing's there in the passage, and it really can't be missed. It's 165 BC. It is the Hasmonean revolt. Understands dark sentences, and this is a real key because, see, this is the same construct that becomes the New World Order, that becomes the one world government, and becomes the beast system that the beast rises out of. And Daniel's prophecy does include the beast in the latter days, rising from the same construct. And that's why this is key. So 165 BC, and then you see this in 1917, Gog of Magog, the prince demon, and his powers, they're attacking. They're the same construct. It's all the same. The final empire is controlled by the same people, and most of all, by the same prince demon. Now, the book of 2nd Esdras defines this super well, and I want to go into that next time, Zen, in great detail, because it is just, I mean, the hairs will stand up on the back of your neck. The prophet Ezra just nailed all of this. But again, you're seeing this foundation where all of this it's even modern Bible canon. It has been all along. None of this stuff is strange doctrine. So, but all of this comes into fruition. A king of fierce countenance practices Israel's religion falsely. That's exactly what Pharisees have always done. In fact, they even have a god named Hashem. I know, it means the name. Mm-hmm. Okay, but now go back and read in Hebrew. Read Genesis 6:4. The Nephilim, the giants there, are called the sons of Hashem in Hebrew. Ouch. Just saying. Anyway, he defiles the temple. They defile the temple then. And of course, there'll be the abomination, desolation in the last days. That's a different event. Israel's neighbors of the Psalm 83 war are a perfect match to this whole scenario. Exiled, the temple priest, to Qumran, which is Bethabara. We covered that, even with maps. And if you didn't see the maps, it's in our books. It's in our series on that. Stands against the Prince of Princes, which is Messiah, of course, who will consume this whole empire with fire from his mouth in the last days, a sword. And then what is that fire? It's the law. That's what 2nd Esdras says. And broken without hand, they were driven out of, these guys were driven out of Jerusalem by Rome in 70 AD. Now, what happens then? What happens then is Phariseeism soon after takes on a new name and a new brand, and it calls itself Rabbinic Judaism. And Rabbinic Judaism, again, you know, Messiah nailed it, called them the synagogue of Satan twice. He talks about their fruits many times, never good. The Dead Sea Scrolls say this, the same exact stuff that Messiah did about these people. And so all of this ties together. When you pull it all together, Gog of Magog attacked in 1917. It's not a future event. It already happened. They're already there. And I'm not talking about the average Israelite. The average Israelite, the average Jew, they're not aware. You know, I come from Boca Raton, Florida, the Jewish capital outside of Manhattan in the U.S., and there's a lot of really good Jews there. Jews are good people, as there are good people in all races, of course. However, there is a cult, there's a cabal that started in 1666. Really, they started all the way back here in 165 BC, and before that, because they were the replacements of the northern tribes. It goes back that far. All of this ties all the way through history, and you know, it's like dominoes. When you put it together and you take the view of connecting history as opposed to disconnecting it, which is what modern historians and Bible scholars do largely.
Yes. I have a question for you because there's an individual in the chat, and been a movement of some people that claim that we have been and are past and in the millennial reign and in the little season. And so some people think, that the millennial reign and the return of Christ has already happened. I don't personally understand it. I've spoken about this, but I wanted your thoughts on that, Tim.
Well, in all fairness, I mean, look, these are people that are trying to interpret prophecy without all of the documents they need. That's the first thing. But the biggest thing is just read Revelation. There's a lot of events that haven't happened yet. So if they haven't happened yet, Revelation hasn't happened yet, hasn't played out. For instance, we have a video on is the Euphrates River drying up? And there's a lot out there that were going crazy. Videos going viral with millions of views about how the Euphrates is drying up. No, it's not. It's not, because here's what happens in Scripture. In the 7 bowls, the 7 vials, before the Euphrates dries up, the entire ocean turns to blood. Has that happened yet? No. Before the Euphrates dries up, the Euphrates then turns to blood. Has that happened yet? No. So the Euphrates is not drying up. And the Euphrates is predicted by some in fraud, because they don't know this, but they're predicting, oh, it's going to dry up at this rate. Well, that's because they're in a drought right now. Yeah, I get that. But that drought's not going to last, according to Scripture. It's not going to dry up yet. It can't, because it's not fulfilling prophecy. So ultimately, they take things out of context that have to happen in order, according to Scripture, especially when some of those elements are mentioned in latter elements as already happening. So you know it has to be chronological. So the Euphrates hasn't dried up yet, and it's not drying up. What's happening is Turkey has been shutting the dams, and they've been saving, because there is a drought. That is truth. But the drought's being worsened by Turkey's actions. And that's, just man's, way to maybe try to make it look like Revelation. But Revelation, many things haven't happened. And until they do, there's no saying that the second coming could occur. I mean, come on, there's no more sin. Oh, have you looked at the earth? I see a whole lot of sin. There's no more war. I see a whole lot of war. There's no more tears. I look at the world and I want to cry every day. I mean, there's no fit to Revelation. There's no way it could have happened yet.
Yes, I agree. I believe that, the Scriptures clearly tell us that the Antichrist comes first, and the man of sin is revealed before Messiah returns. And that's where we are now, in my opinion. So, yeah, I know a lot of people are teaching this doctrine, but in my opinion, it's not correct. I've done shows on the millennial reign to give people clarity. It speaks about, that there will be a new heavens and a new earth and New Jerusalem descending down. Then, we have the, as far as those being the harvest and those being allowed, numbered with the elect being allowed to enter into New Jerusalem for what will be the millennial reign, and Christ will be with us during that time. So, yeah, all these things haven't occurred.
The other thing, too, is just read the first words that John uses in Revelation. The first sentences, he says, this is a book of future events.
Yes.
So anyone that's taking it prior to about whatever he wrote, 90 AD or whatever, is taking it out of context, because he's not referring to events prior to that.
Right. And even Enoch told, he's writing for a distant and remote generation.
Yes.
But we have just a minute remaining, Tim. Just want to give you a chance to mention your websites and your where people can go to find and support your work. And as I said, Tim will be joining us again. We'll continue with this series and the revelations he's been sharing, bringing forth.
Amen. Thank you, Zen. Well, our books,
Thank you, brother.
we have, again, 10 books published in the last few years, many more on the way. They're all available at ophirinstitute.com. That's our book website. They're available on Amazon worldwide, pretty much, and in the Philippines on Shopee, because Amazon actually doesn't operate there, at least not in the same sense as they do in the U.S. When you contact us, which you can do at any time, at thegodculture@gmail.com. We try to respond to all of the emails that we get. We respond to our stream and comments and things like that too. You'll see that. Anyway, YouTube is our principal platform, but we have alternatives in Rumble, Odyssey, Utreon, also on TikTok now, I mentioned in the beginning. We actually tried Instagram. That's been hacked already in just a week or two. And we've got to reset that up, I guess. We're working that out right now. Facebook, The God Culture Space original. Alternatives to Facebook, Parler and Gab, and then our podcasts. Just go to our website, thegodculture.com, click on podcasts there, and there you go. We have tons of projects that we're working on. Many we can't announce at the moment, but exciting things happening, Zen.
Thank you, brother. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. Be blessed, all. Good night. Shalom.
Good night.
Be
Shalom.
blessed, Tim. We'll talk to you again soon.
God bless.
Good night.
Thank you, Zen.
Bless you, brother. Good night, all.
Hi, my name is Ella, and I'm 10 years old. I'm one of the millions of children born to parents suffering from the sheeple virus. Symptoms include the inability to think for oneself, the attention span of a goldfish, and a strong belief in government and the mainstream media. It is estimated that 1 out of every 2 children are being raised by parents infected with the sheeple virus. But there is a cure. For as little as 19 cents per day, you can become a TFR supporter and help children like me get their daily dose of truth. Together, we will make sure every child has protection from deception.
I just